Hello everyone, and welcome to the Bridge Church Online. My name is Rob, and I'm the Men's Ministry Director. Whether you're tuning in for the very first time, or you're already a part of our incredible church family, I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to dive into a time of worship as we gather to connect, learn, and grow. If you're new here, I want to extend a special welcome. I encourage you to explore our website and connect with us on social media to learn more about who we are and how you can get involved. Also, don't forget to fill out our digital connect card in the description box below so that we can get to know you and find out how we can walk with you on your faith journey. Our heart is to be a bridge that connects you to a deeper relationship with God, a loving community, and God's purpose for your life. Now let's prepare our hearts as we transition into a time of worship. Thank you again for joining us today. So let's lean in, open our hearts, and allow this online experience to be a meaningful moment of worship and learning.
Go deeper now. sing Santo, 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 Santo eres tú. We love you, Lord. Santo, 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 Santo eres tú. Keep worshiping Him, church. Santo, Santo. Nothing else matters now. It's all about you. This is a sweet sound to His ears. Santo, Santo, Santo. We worship you, Lord.
So there's this law of life, if you will, that you would not be able to identify by name. If you just saw the name of the law, you'd have no idea what it was. But it is a law that we've all experienced. It's a law of life that you experience on a regular basis, frustratingly so. And the law that I'm talking about is Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law states this, that work or any kind of task that you have will expand to the allotted time given for its completion. So if you've got something on your to-do list, something you got to do at home, something you got to do at work, that task itself will expand to the allotted time that you've been given or that you give it for its completion. So the way that this plays out is if you have 5 minutes to complete a task that should take you 5 minutes, well, you'll typically get it done in 5 minutes, but here's where Parkinson's law comes into play. If you take that same task that should take you 5 minutes, but you've been given an hour to do it, something magic happens. It takes you an hour to do it. And there's a few different factors at play. One, the more time you have or the more time you've been given, the more complicated a job can become. Or what's probably true for most of us is that the more time you have, right, the more likely you are to procrastinate. And so the length of time, the length of waiting, and before you know it, that job or that task fills the entire time you've been given. We've all experienced this, even frustratingly so, okay? And this is why, and I'm not trying to get spouses to be mad at each other here, but this is why that house project that you asked him to do on Saturday, and it was supposed to take him 1 hour, took the whole day, right? He went to Home Depot, forgot he wasn't a carpenter, and just started to get ideas and, get slowing things down, just perusing, browsing, taking the time. And next thing you know, something that should have taken an hour took the whole day. That's Parkinson's law in play. Or, come on, something that we all know, maybe you're a college student or a graduate student, or if you've ever been in school, you know this. It's why when you had 3 weeks to write that paper, right? You're finishing it 3 hours before it was due. And nowadays when you're submitting them online, you're submitting it 3 minutes to midnight. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is Parkinson's law. It's something we've all experienced, that work or a task magically will just expand to fill the time and space that it is given. In a very similar way, the same is true of God and your spiritual life. God will fill whatever space we make for Him in our lives. And this idea is what I want to wrestle with over the next couple of weeks in our new series, Make Room, the spiritual life for ordinary people. That I want to wrestle with what it looks like and why it should matter. That we need to make room to experience more of God's transforming power and grace in our lives. And I don't want to belabor the point because after all, it is a subtitle, but I very intentionally picked this subtitle and I want to just give you a little bit of explanation of why. The spiritual life for ordinary people. And it's because, and maybe you'd fall into this bucket, I know certainly that I do, right? The idea of experiencing more of God in your life and experiencing more of God's grace and more of His power in your life, so often that's kind of like reserved for the spiritual people. The thought is, if you're a Jesus follower, I hope to get there one day, just like grandma who seems to have a direct line to God. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the goal, like be like grandma one day. The idea of a thriving spiritual life, experiencing more of God in your life is something that can feel elusive, so ethereal for others, too abstract to actually do anything with it. And then maybe if you are a follower of Jesus in the room and you've been following for quite some time, the idea of experiencing more of God in your life can actually be a frustrating endeavor, because maybe you've experienced this. I know I have. The longer you follow, the more stagnant faith and your spiritual life feels like it becomes, and you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. Well, no matter who you are or where you would plot yourself on the broad spectrum of faith and spirituality. I mean, you might have been following Jesus for years, or you're still on the front end. Maybe you would call yourself convinced and committed of who Jesus is, or you're just curious and peering in. You might have a bunch of Bible verses memorized, or you're not even sure if you own one, okay? The potential to experience more of God's rule, grace, and power, and peace and love personally in your life is available to everyone. And something that I want to encourage you with, I find this idea so encouraging, that God wants to meet ordinary people like you and I in the ordinary moments of life. In fact, a thriving spiritual life is not one where we have these like high emotional mountaintop moments at church. The spiritual life is not one of these things where it's like you're sitting in your living room in the morning, you're reading your Bible, and then you hear the audible voice of God, okay? If that's ever happened, we need to have a different conversation. I've never heard it. But the spiritual life, a thriving spiritual life, is not these high mountaintop moments. Rather, it is quite simply, and I would say quite beautifully, walking with God and inviting God into the ordinary, seemingly mundane moments of parenting, of working, of schooling, of budgeting, of inviting God into the everyday moments of your life. That God is interested in your life. So, if God will fill whatever space we make for him in our lives, then we'll pivot to the question of this series. How do we make room? How does anybody make room? So glad that you asked. So the way that you make room, the way that I make room, the way that anybody can make room to experience more of God's grace and power in our lives is through these age-old things that the church has practiced for a long time called spiritual disciplines. Spiritual disciplines. Now, for some of you that have followed Jesus for quite some time, you're already feeling guilty. Hold all that for just a moment, okay? And you're like, I don't even know what a spiritual discipline is. Let's start with just disciplines, okay? Let's just knock off the spiritual part for just a second, okay? We're at church after all. Let's just talk about disciplines for just a second, okay? The key, you know this, the key to growing in any area of your life, the key to being able to do something that you cannot currently do is to put into practice the right disciplines that make room, that set the right conditions for you to progress and eventually be able to do the thing that you can't do or are not currently doing. Here's a pretty just kind of run-of-the-mill definition of a discipline. A discipline is any activity that you can do, any activity that I can do that will enable me to eventually do what I cannot currently do, right? Any activity, any discipline, any activity that I can do by my own willpower that will eventually give me the ability to do what I could not do, that will eventually give me the power to do what I could not do before. Let's take a really simple example. Running a marathon, okay? Running a marathon. You don't wake up and just decide tomorrow, after having never done any kind of running, that I'm gonna run a marathon. If you did that tomorrow, we might not see you the next day, right? Like, what do you do? If you decide to run a marathon, you put into practice the discipline of running. I've never done this, but I've heard if you train for a marathon, you get on a plane, right? You run 3 miles, and 5 miles, and 7 miles, and 9 miles, and 13, then back to 11, then 14, and eventually through the training program and the discipline of running, you have now gained the ability, you've now gained the power to run a marathon, and you've got the bumper sticker to prove it, right? Disciplines enable you to progress. They facilitate growth. And even in some cases, and you've experienced this, especially in some cases with your health and even in certain relationships, certain disciplines, the right disciplines can be life-changing and even life-saving. What they do, they make room for you to access a power that you did not have before, to do what you could not do before. And the same is true with spiritual disciplines. And maybe even more helpful, change the language. They're spiritual habits that you should put into practice. Or maybe what a lot of authors and pastors that have been impactful to me that talk about these call them spiritual practices. Spiritual practices, age-old practices that church has been practicing for centuries that make room for us to experience more of God in our everyday lives. Things like the personal study of the scriptures, silence and solitude, prayer, sacrifice, fasting, Sabbath or rest, okay? But before we get into the details of the disciplines and before we get into all of that, okay, don't worry, we're not going there just yet. I don't want to get ahead. We've got to lay a groundwork. We've got to lay a groundwork for specifically what the spiritual disciplines are not. What they are not. Before we get into what they are and how to practice them, we need to get a few things right about what the spiritual disciplines are not. And I hope for just the next couple of minutes to take the pressure off some of you Christians are already feeling guilty, okay? So just hang with me for 1 second. Here's what the spiritual disciplines are not. They are not a barometer of spirituality. They are not a measure, a barometer of your spirituality. It is so easy. It's so easy to grow burdened by the idea of reading my Bible and praying and sacrificing and giving and all of those things if we think that God is grading us on our performance based on how well or how often we do them. Come on, we've all had moments where we felt guilty. It's been so long since I've prayed. It's been so long since I've opened up my Bible. What is the root of that guilt? That God is looking down at you and thinking, do better, be better, you should know better. But when these disciplines, these habits, these practices, when they become a way to impress God, we've completely missed the point. And in some cases, these disciplines, in a very toxic way, and I've been there, they can become a way to impress others. Whenever disciplines become a way to impress God or to impress other people, to show the barometer of spirituality that we have completely missed the point. They're not a way to impress God. God isn't looking to be impressed by you. They're a way to walk with God because he wants to walk with you. And as we'll see in a minute, you can practice all these disciplines perfectly and completely miss the point. Number 2, they are not a way to earn favor with God. This is so important, so helpful. Take some of the pressure off. They're not a way to get extra credit with God. They're not a way to earn more grace. They're not a way to earn more favor. They're not a way to earn forgiveness. They're not a way to earn goodwill. They're not a way to earn a hedge of protection around your life. Come on, we've all been there. Have you ever been in a situation where something didn't go your way and you had a thought, wouldn't have happened if I'd been reading my Bible more? Wouldn't have happened if I just volunteered at church more? This wouldn't have happened. Come on. To do that is just bad theology. That God's love for you has never been based on your performance, and it never will be. In fact, the disciplines, they're not for him. They're for you, and they're for me. They're not a way to earn his grace. In fact, as my wife Julie so just powerfully said as I was processing this series with her, she said this, and I quote, that disciplines are not a way to earn God's grace. Disciplines are in a way to put you in the path of God's grace. It's right there. Sidebar, if you're married, quote your spouse in a presentation, okay? But she's so right. It's not a way to earn anything. That God's grace is already there. God's grace is already available. That these disciplines, they put you in the path of God's grace that's already freely given. And third, they're not necessarily unpleasant. Okay? Just because it's a discipline doesn't mean you would choose not to do it if you had the choice. In fact, I'm just telling you, if you stuck with me throughout the series, I think here's what you'll find. In this fast-paced, always going, always earning, overstimulated, comparison as a hobby, worth in the zeros, the titles and the things, world full of distractions that we live in. Anything that might lead you to become a person that experiences more joy, peace, and love, I'm just telling you, you might find these things to be downright enjoyable. In fact, I'd argue that maybe in a time unlike any other time in history, we are probably more hungry and thirsty for these disciplines than ever before, and maybe even more than you realize. And lastly, and where I want to spend most of our time this morning, is they are not the end. They are a means to an end. That these disciplines, whatever it is, prayer, Bible, right, whatever you want to talk about, they are not the end goal. This is so important for us to get. The goal, the end, is not the discipline itself. The nature of a discipline, right? It's to enable you to do what you can't currently do. Training is never the end. It's always a means to an end. In fact, for all the Christians in the room, all the followers of Jesus, whenever these spiritual disciplines become the end goal in and of themselves, you know what begins to happen? We will miss the very heart of God. When these disciplines become the end goal, okay, I've got to do them, I've got to knock them out, and I'm going to be better at them than anybody else. You know what'll start to happen? You start to get bored with your faith. When these disciplines become the end, then your walk with Jesus just becomes a to-do list of religious activities. When these disciplines become the end, I'm just telling you, here's what starts to happen. And I've been there, I'm not pointing the finger, I get this. That we can so easily become self-righteous and look down at those that don't practice